I work in the thoroughbred racing industry as a gallop rider, and this is just an idea of how my average day goes. I arrive around 8 a.m. in the winter and get started pretty much right away, get my stuff on, and then get legged up onto my first horse. Right now, a lot of the horses are tacked for me, but when we're less busy, I do usually tack them myself. Sometimes I gallop by myself, but today I had help with another gallop rider, so sometimes we do take the horses in company so that they can go side by side with a friend. With these two, we just trotted them together for the first lap, and then when we were galloping, which are the second and third laps around the track, I took him alone because he is just starting out galloping again, and he has a tendency to play and buck, and I didn't want him to accidentally kick her. This track is just the track at our private training farm that I work at. In town, which is where all the horses will be racing in their actual races, the track is a lot wider and there are rails on it. So this track is a more natural setting, and a lot of the horses prefer to gallop at home in comparison to in town because it's a lot quieter other than the traffic, and sometimes coyotes come onto the track. But it's a really nice natural setting, and it gets them used to a lot of things that they won't see in town, and I think it creates a really good, well-rounded horse that is less likely to be super spooky. We also get to jog them for longer on this track since we don't have to share it with other trainers like we would in town, so we jog them a full lap. This track is about 7/8 of a mile, so they'll jog one full lap and then they gallop 2. A lot of people have the misconception that these horses are sprinted fast every day, when really they just train at a quicker canter than what the typical performance rider would go at. We call it galloping, that's just the way we refer to their training, but it isn't actually a true gallop. They do actual breezing at a true gallop for exercise to get fit, but it isn't very frequent. I would compare it to jumper riders schooling, where they don't school over fences every day and they aren't schooling over their max height frequently, because galloping does take a lot out of a horse. So it would be a really bad thing if trainers were actually breezing their horses every day, but this just simply isn't what's happening. After they're done their 2 gallop laps, we jog them back, and when we get to the gap where they come off to walk back to the barn, we always halt them because there are no rails. We don't want them to get into the habit of being able to come straight off the track, because some horses do learn to start deking out at the gap and try to leave, which isn't a good habit at all. Once we're back in the barn, I jump off, I run 1 stirrup up, and then I undo the girth, and Poncho had wraps on, so I have to bend down to unwrap those, and then I pull the rest of the saddle off. The person who grooms pulls his bridle off and clips a lead shank to his halter that is under the bridle, and then they take him out to go get water, and then he goes out in a paddock to hang out and have a roll.
He is pretty. Hi! Hi, Beaver! Get out of the way, he's gonna stomp on you with his big feet. Go. Hi, Bobby. He's so handsome. Hi, Lou, what are you doing?
We get people to lead them down for us while we adjust our stirrups and the girth. Sometimes we do it on our own without someone leading them, but it's just a lot safer in case they do start screwing around. The people that you can see standing holding horses near the paddocks are grazing them because all of the horses get hand grazed before they get brought back in. Brutus is just getting used to going in company because he is still quite green. He hasn't done a whole lot of work with other horses and has not raced yet. So I brought the stick out just in case he needed a little encouragement. We don't usually gallop any of the horses holding a stick. I just brought it out with him because last time I had to use a whole lot of leg to keep him up beside the horse and I was dying afterwards. So I brought it out today just in case, but he was phenomenal and I never actually needed to wave the stick at him at all. Learning to go well in company is really important for a racehorse because they have to be bold and willing to go through tight gaps and be around lots of other horses while training and while racing. So we want to build confidence in a horse like Brutus by putting them out with a partner who is nice and quiet and pretty steady. So he is out here with Buzz, who has gone in company lots and is a very good boy. Once they're more comfortable going in company, we start doing drills like switching sides while cantering. So one rider would fall back and then the other would go forward and we'd swap sides. Since our track is narrow, we have to be more careful, but it's really good for getting horses used to having horses coming up behind them as well as coming up from behind to get in beside another horse.
Such a cool horse.
These two horses are doing the same training, jog 1, gallop 2, as we did with the first set of horses. This is the standard exercise that all of our horses do on the farm, unless they're just starting training or have some specific requirement, or if they're having a special sprint day or something, it'll change slightly, but this is pretty much what we always do with them, unless they're having a jog day or a sprint day. This is the most common.
Hey, that's not nice. Get up there. Get up there. Oh, good boy. Good boy. Good boy. See, we're okay.
When we're galloping in sets, sometimes one of the other horses will get really strong and be trying to run off. So then naturally the person on the quieter horse will fall back and let the strong horse go ahead so they don't get quite as racy. The hardest part about a job as a gallop rider is honestly holding these horses back because they're so driven to run and they just want to go when they get out on the track, even when they're just learning their jobs. So this is why it is such a physically demanding sport and why you need to be so fit to be able to work a job like this, because these horses just want to go and it is your job to keep them maintained and at a comfortable pace where they're not going to be hurting themselves or running way too quickly and ruining their work for that day. Generally speaking, the thoroughbreds know when to pull up because they know when their job is finished, but I stand differently in my stirrups and start to slowly relax my contact on the reins and let them slip through my hands, and then I also ask them to whoa, and then they go down to a trot, and we let them trot out and then come to a walk, turn around, and jog back home.
Yeah, he was pretty good. When that one loud... Big guy. I could grab onto one of the rafters off of him and hey. Yeah, he was playing a bit. He was really good about being in company though this time. He's a lot more confident. Good boy. Yeah. Which is funny because Buzz is being more of a turd than Burnham would be. Yeah, Burnham didn't do any.
In an average day of galloping this year, I generally ride anywhere from 8 to 10 horses. We currently have 16 horses in training, with a few more coming later in the year. Last year we had over 40, so this year has been a lot more manageable, but typically I'm getting on at least 8 horses a day. I didn't have my helmet cam on for all of them today, but I did for most of them, so I'm going to time lapse the rest of my rides. This day I rode 10 horses. Most of the horses I'm getting on this year are between the ages of about 4 and 6. We have some 3-year-olds, and those would be our youngest horses this year. And I think our oldest horse is 9 or 10 years old, and his name is Burnham. And he had a very successful racing career so far, and he's still going strong. Since our horses are typically so young, they are pretty excitable when we're riding, so they tend to play sometimes, and they'll just have little bucks, and they want to go fast. But it's all part of the job because these horses are so fit and they're fed such a high energy diet on top of having an exciting job. So playtime is understandable, and so long as they're respectful about it and not being dirty, it's not really something that I would get particularly mad about, because they're just kids and they're getting back into winter training, and it's kind of normal to have some fun. For anyone looking into getting into gallop riding, I would make sure you're a very strong rider who can ride through antics and silliness without getting nervous, along with very physically fit, because it's a lot harder than it looks, and it can be very difficult to hold them back sometimes, especially when you're learning. So you do tend to get bolted on a lot while you're learning, and it can be very scary, I'm not gonna lie. And speaking from experience with people we have personally tried to train as gallop riders, not an awful lot of the people who come out and are interested actually end up working out. So it can be a hard industry to get into. And this job is really more than just being a good, strong rider, because a lot of the riders who don't work out are exceptional riders, and not being able to gallop a thoroughbred doesn't change that. But it's just a completely different style of riding. And even for people with experience with off-the-track thoroughbreds, I can say as someone who does both, riding a thoroughbred on the racetrack is an entirely different ballgame. After galloping 10 horses, I have to put my tack away. We knot all the racing lines while we're riding, so I have to untie the knots in the lines that I used, and then carry it back to the tack room. We have a dip bucket for the bits to wash off the saliva so that they don't get all gross. So before putting the bridles away, I always dip the bridle into the wash bucket.
Okay.
Since it's winter, I'm fairly layered while I'm galloping, so undressing takes a few minutes. We always gallop in vests, so I leave my protective vest at work because I only ride in it when I'm galloping. And then I also have a special helmet that I use only for galloping, along with 2 pairs of gloves that I wear at the same time in the winter.
Pardon? Yeah. Oh.